Tim Smith welcoming you to RUHM, our podcast here at Cinna Newport, to expose the amazing stories, people, places, and properties of Southern California to the world. I'm so honored today and feel a little bit humbled to have one of the most new inspirational stories and just an amazing human being, Lauri Burns, joining me in my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So Lauri, just to give the listeners just a little tidbit, give us just a little snapshot of you and what your kind of purpose and your charity is.
Okay, so I grew up here, Newport Beach, and I was a foster kid that was trafficked, and my charity is based around that. I'm saving foster kids that are trafficked and homeless.
So I want to get into the story, and this is like to be honest, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and the first half of the story was very hard for me to listen to. And I found myself wanting to come and be like, oh my gosh, Lauri, I'm so sorry. And then like 2 minutes into the change, I started thinking, oh my gosh, that would be disrespectful because without these experiences, she never would have become who you are today and what you're doing. But just to start, like, personal growth and change, I think, is one of our big objectives in life. And I think that there's a lot of people that think people can't change. Like, you can't change. And so give us kind of your just synopsis on what it takes for somebody to change.
Well, I don't know specifically what it takes for everyone. It's a moment. And the moment could be anything. It could be, a fight with your spouse. It could be, it could be anything. It could be something that threatens your life, or it could be just a feeling. But there's a moment. I got to tell you, everybody that has changed their life can tell you there was a moment.
Okay,
so I want to say there's a moment.
Okay, so starts with a moment, but don't you think along the way, there's a million moments that maybe weren't taken and weren't responded to?
I do. I do think that when you look back, you were given many chances to change, but it wasn't the moment. And when the moment happens, everything changes.
And so when the moment happens, when you make that change, what does it take to continue on that path, to continue up the mountain with the new change?
Right. I think, it took me a while, but I want to say it was responding yes to the universe. When I started seeing that, okay, so you want to I'll give you some of the story, right? So I grew up in the system. I'm actually from New York. My father was seriously abusive. It came to a point where there was a witness and he almost got exposed. So he took his handgun and hid it and set me up and put me in a ward for the criminally insane, right? I was 13 and I was Jewish. I grew up Jewish. So right after my bat mitzvah, where you're supposed to be like having a merging with God, I don't know, what that is in other religions. Here I am in an insane asylum tied to a bed in a straitjacket. So let me just say I had a spiritual downfall, right? Right there. That was it. I was angry at God before that. Now I wasn't talking to him.
So if your dad set you up, right? You're in this place, which you shouldn't be, serving time for something he did that he wouldn't expose, that he wouldn't come out with.
Right. And I didn't hold him as responsible as I did God. And I didn't even know who God was. I just said, okay, I'm born into this crazy family. Now this happens. Now you put me here. It's obvious you hate me. And that's what framed the name of my book, Punished for Purpose, because I thought God was punishing me. What I didn't know was he was preparing me. When I realized he was preparing me, everything I went through was a blessing. Even my dad, even the setup, everything I went through. And I always say, like, when you're looking at the ashes, like, why did I go through this? And you're looking like, why me? Why me? Why did God do that? Which is where I was back then, right? I'm just sitting in ashes. It's just a downward spiral. When I started to use what I had been through to help others, ambers started to light up in the ashes. And all of a sudden, I just kept on going and going and going. And my whole life made sense. Everything.
That's a beautiful moment. So you have the moment.
Yeah.
You're still in the ashes.
Yeah.
At that point, and again, I'm not trying to make it, but at that point, it would be easy to be like, I'm a victim here. Like, I am a victim of what my father did. But in that moment, you're saying that when you've changed almost a mindset, you're looking at these ashes into opportunities or ambers. That's what perpetuates the growth.
Right. So it wasn't actually, the analogy I'm using came way later when I got older and old lady and mature. Like, now I can see what happened, right? But after that thing happened in that institution and I got out, I got shipped to a group home with a bunch of bad kids. and started going down more. By the time I moved here to Newport Beach, I quickly ended up in juvenile hall, and I exited foster care system to homelessness, as you know, and I ended up getting trafficked, right? So pregnant and then trafficked. My kid was taken away and put in the foster care system. Now I'm trafficked. I mean, it just kept on going down, 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 down. Could it get any worse? And it was 4 years out on the streets here, working as a prostitute, when I got picked up by gang members who took me into the woods, raped me all night with the intention of killing me in the morning. Now, I know this isn't your usual show, but this is real life. This is really what's happening here, you know, in Orange County, right? So I get picked up, taken in the woods by gang members. They have guns. I can tell through their conversation that they're going to kill me in the morning. And I realized, oh my God, I've wanted to die for so long. Ever since I was back in that house with that dad, I've wanted to die. Just kill me. And I started screaming, kill me, like at the top of my lungs, because I don't want to go through the night just to be killed in the morning. Just kill me right now. You know, let's get it over with. We're all on the same team. And what happened was something different. That's when my life started over. It began again. They left me in the canyon for dead. Some stranger, like a good Samaritan, driving down the road, sees my body in the brush. I don't even know how. It was nighttime. Picks me up. I'm barely dressed. I have blood all over me. And it's like he's a big black guy, kind of like the guy in Green Mile, because he picks me up like I'm nothing. And I don't trust anyone. As you can imagine, everything I've been through. So I start fighting with the guy. No, please put me down. Please put me down. Please. Because I'm thinking he's going to hurt me. And when tears started coming down his eyes, and he's like, please, would you please just let me help you? And when I saw the emotion on this man's face and I felt his heart for the first time in forever, I trusted someone. And that man took me to a hospital, and a cab took me back. And within 24 hours, I was in a place in San Clemente that helped me for about a week. And then I waited at someone's house for 3 more weeks and got into this place in here in Costa Mesa, where they said I could stay for a month. Meanwhile, my kid went into foster care. I mean, it seemed like I didn't know what was going on. It's not like I could see clearly what was going on at that point. It was just taking it a day at a time and just doing the next indicated thing. But what happened was I get a year sober. I get my daughter back. I get a job in tech. Tech is my thing, right? Really good at math. So I get a job at tech, and I start a little meeting at my house for women and children to come, because I think God has blessed me so much. And I don't even know what God is at this point. I just know there's good coming my way, right? As you know from reading my book, I prayed to George Burns. I'm like, okay, he said you could believe in anything, a frog, a tree, a rainbow. I'm like, I can't do that. But there was a guy that if he was God, I would trust him. So I started praying to George.
I totally connected that when you said that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, that's kind of like in my realm.
George is cool. I could talk to George about anything,
sure.
Right? So I started a meeting for women and children, and
How old were you at this time?
25?
25.
Yeah.
And so you started a meeting for women.
With their children.
With their children.
Single moms that were in trouble, addicted, needed help in Orange County, here in Costa Mesa, like on Santa Isabel. And these women would come with their kids. And one week, new woman came and she said, I have nowhere for my kid to go. I can't get help. And I said, well, my daughter's got a bunk bed. I'll watch your kid. She was 12. Her daughter was 12. My daughter was like 6. Anyway, long story short, I watch her daughter. She dies of a drug overdose. I've got her daughter. I'm like, I call, and if you look at my story, if you read my book and the movie, about to be made, everything that happens is like breadcrumbs to the next thing that's going to happen. And I just keep on doing it, right? So I've got this kid, and because of what I went through, get that, because of what I went through, because if it were you might just, okay, take her to the foster care system, her mom's not here. But because of what I went through, I could not drop her off. And I took her over to, I called social services. I didn't take her. I called there, and they said, you could drop her off. And I'm like, no, there's got to be something else. Well, you could apply to be a foster mom. Okay, I applied. There is no way they're going to let me be a foster mom. I was like one of the worst juvenile delinquents in our county. Like, I grew up in juvenile hall. So they said, no, we can't make you a foster mom. But if you get like...
So when you're going through the application process, then they do a background check. They do everything. Like, there's no way we're going to let this lady, right, who's been sober now for a year.
And I'm real proud of the year, but they're like not looking at the year like it's much. Just like, get 7 years.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk.
Is that what it was? 7 years?
7 years. So I go home and I don't know what to do. So I call the list of the girls that come to my meeting thing. This is how it works. when you're on the path, when you're on the right path, because things start going. One of the girls is paralegal. She says, well, if you get guardianship, they can't take her no matter what. So I'm like, oh, okay. How much
Loophole.
is that? I Google that. Okay, $1,500. I called the guy up that dropped the mom off before she was gone, and he writes me a check. So I'm like, okay, I'm her guardian. So kids keep on coming. It's crazy, like a magnet. Kids keep on
So
coming.
then you took guardianship of her, but
Of
you're
her.
still 6 years out from being actually
Yes.
awarded her based on the foster
And
care.
by the time I'm awarded her, she's a receptionist at my computer company that I work
Yeah.
at. You know, she's 18.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, kids keep on coming, and what happens is I'm just taking the kids. I'm just taking care of them. I don't know.
You
I don't know
said
what else
something
to do.
in the first one of the
Yeah.
things I listened to that really connected for my sister and I.
Mm-hmm.
My sister's like your biggest fan now. You said that when these kids would come, you're like, how could I not take them in if they were my kid or my sibling?
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy because the amount of love and care and everything needed. Talk a little bit more about that, because like that was really memorable for me, because it's hard in life. We go along just doing us and things show up all the time. If we're open, we have these opportunities, but it takes that commitment that you have and that you continue to have.
Yeah. So I think, you know, when they would call social services, even after I became a foster mom, with like, oh, this kid's been running, she's been doing drugs, she's sexualized behavior. I mean, people were like, foster parents are like, no, right?
Yeah.
I met my family when I was 12 in that group home, 13 in that group home in New York, because I never bonded to my original family. They were scary to me. You know, there was a lot of bad stuff going on. The only thing I bonded to was my dog, right? So when I get to this place with these reckless kids, I'm like, oh my God, they're just like me. You know, they've been through so much and they're so strong and I love them and I never wanted to leave them. So when the kids show up, they are the kids that were in the group home. I see them the same. They're like, oh my God, come on, you guys, come on. It's not like a commitment. It's not like work. It doesn't feel like work to me. It's just like every time a new one came, an amber lit. It was like, oh my God. And then, you know, kids kept on coming, and then a relative gets abused, right? I don't want to say who it is just to keep the anonymity, but not my kid, but one of the kids in my family gets abused and gets taken in the foster care system. Now I'm on fire. I head over there. I'm like, okay, you can't take him. That's, you know, I'm going to take him. I'll be his foster mom. And then I remembered when they took me in that little room and told me, no, we're back in that room. And I'm like, oh no, don't do this. And when they opened the file, they're like, you were here 7 years ago. We told you to get 7 years sober. Now, I'm not counting the time. I'm not even thinking. When I heard no, all I heard was no. I didn't hear the 7 years. But she said, it says right here, if you get 7 years, yeah, I've got over 7 years. Oh, okay. We're going to waive your record, right? I thought it was just to get my relative. I was so excited. But what happened was the relative did okay, got their kid back. And all of a sudden, 2 days before Christmas, my phone rings and it's some lady. And she's like, is this Lauri? And I'm like, yeah. And she said, we've got you on the list of foster parents in Orange County. And we've got a girl that was sexually abused in Vegas. And now she's here in Orange County. And it looks like you've got an open room at your, and I'm like, you've got me on a freaking list? Like, you could see, people say, how did you do? I did not do this. I said yes every time a breadcrumb dropped. That's all I did. I just kept on saying yes. And when you say yes to the universe, you will find your purpose. Like, people are constantly searching, like, what's my purpose? It's not something you need to look for. You will be brought it. But if you're not listening and you're not saying yes, and when I say listening, like, I get strange things that say, bring a book with you. I don't even know why I would bring a book with me. I'm not going anywhere important, but I've learned to listen to it. Throw the book in the car. I think it's my thought. I'm not really sure. How I know it's not my thought is because it doesn't make any sense. It clearly left at a left field.
Let's
right?
just stop right
Yeah.
there. And I don't want to
Yeah.
interject on the story, but so is it an audible voice? And obviously we have voices in our head all day. And if I listen to those voices, they're probably not the voices I should follow. But how do you know when you're actually getting a message that's different?
Because it doesn't make any sense. Because I'm headed somewhere. Like, if you're headed out this morning, you might be like, I want to wear this jacket. I got to grab my briefcase. So now if it says, grab your calculator, you're just like, why would I need my calculator? I never take my calculator to work. It doesn't make any sense. It's your own thoughts. It's mixed in with all of your own thoughts, and they're coming all the time. But it's the one that doesn't make sense. And for some people, like, I got this big place in LA. It wasn't even my place. It was two guys. that, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves because I haven't even talked about starting the charity, but it was two guys that said, Lauri can start a charity. Let's hire her to do it. One was a billionaire. His family founded the Franklin Templeton Fund, and the other one was a movie star. And they set me up to get a building for them. The movie star wants a warehouse. He's like, I want a big warehouse and just put people in. And the other guy wants an old treatment center. He says, get at least 100 beds. Well, they're two different ideas from the same guys. So I'm like, I'll look at every treatment center and every warehouse. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, I find a treatment center connected to a warehouse, both for lease, by the same owner. I mean, just that in itself is insane.
So you called the two guys.
Yeah, and I'm on their board because, I had to set up a board in order I did all their documents, their charity stuff, their corporation, their website, their business cards. I did everything. So I'm on their board. So when the lease comes through, they say, go ahead, sign it, Lauri. So I sign it for both buildings. Well, one of them gets sick and the other one moves back to where he's from for a movie commitment or something, right? Anyway, they both fail out, right? One of them, the billionaire, gives me enough money for like first, last, and a little bit of security. And I've got a building for $20,000, two buildings, $20,000 a month and going up every month for the next 20 years with my name on the lease. My name. I'm like, holy crap. And I'm at work at this point. I'm working in technology.
I mean, are you feeling stressed about this?
Stressed? Yes.
Yes, for sure. Because you're like, how can I do this, right?
Yeah,
There's like, this is impossible.
My new book called Notes to George, because, I was writing notes to George all the time and putting them in a God box, is always, how can I do this? And it's what it is. It's fear, false evidence appearing real in my head constantly. You can't do this. You don't have the money. This is ridiculous. You better get, and then, no. I'm going to trust the universe that this happened for a reason, right? So
okay, stop there for a second.
Yeah.
If you turn the other side of the coin, faith is fear turned inside out because it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The only way you activate it is to say yes, to jump, to sign the lease, right?
Well, the lease was signed before they ditched me.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, believe me, I wouldn't have signed a $20,000. I was paying for my daughter's college. She was over at Columbia. I'm paying for her stuff and my house and everything. I wouldn't have signed any lease for $20,000. I didn't even want a building in LA. I'm in Orange County.
Right.
Right? Why would I want a building in LA? It's too far. I'm already driving to LA for work. So bottom line, they both fail out. And I've got this building. So I'm at Northrop Grumman. Now I'm like the IT director at Northrop Grumman in El Segundo. And the phone rings, and it's some guy. Hey, Lauri, this is Paul. I just moved into town. I like foster kids. He's in LA. I wanted to find a charity I could stick with. I retired. I sold my investment agency, and I'm here now, and I want to help some agencies. So people kept on saying Lauri Burns. Well, I didn't want to meet you. I wanted to know more about you. So I ordered your book, Punished for Purpose, on Amazon, and I just finished your story. And I want to help you, Lauri. Now, I've learned through failures not to tell people where to help because people already know what they have to give.
Yeah.
And for me to say, hey, I want you to come over and bring food, you're just like, what does that have to do with me? It doesn't even feel right. So I said, Paul, what do you want to do? And he's like, I don't know, Lauri. And I said, Paul, God will tell you, and not in a spiritual way, but you know how you're supposed to help. The thing is, are you listening? You know what you have to give. I go, if you're an accountant, you could help the girls with their bills, at my place or whatever. If you're a lawyer, you could help us with some legal stuff they're going through. So are you listening? And I go, maybe you should just get off the phone, think about it, and call me back. And he goes, no, Lauri, I know what I need to do. I'm going to wire you $500,000. I have no idea why, but I have a feeling that you're going to do something good with it. And at first I'm like, yeah. Some random guy that called me on the phone is going to wire me $500,000. Great. Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Paul.
You're thinking it's not on the show. Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
So the next day I look at the bank account. I'm like, holy shiz cakes. There's $500,000 in our bank account. So I call my best friend that started my charity with me. And I'm like, oh my God, Linda, that guy really wired the money. So I call him back. I'm like, Paul, I just got these 2 buildings in LA because Paul's in LA. I go, meet me over there. He's like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. I'm going to meet you. So he comes over, he tours the building with the 100 beds. He's like, Lauri, we could save so many lives. You could save the girls you've been saving. We could start saving their lives. And when you save a girl, you're not just saving a girl, you're saving a family. You're saving a generation.
Posterity,
this is a mom,
yes.
right? So he says, look, I'll give you another $500,000 if you quit your job. And I'm like, quit my job? I love tech. I love tech. I love math. I'm like, No, Paul, I'm going to donate like you and I'll hire the whole team. I'm a certified project manager. I can hire everyone. You know what I mean? I'll get the place going. This is what I do. And he said, Lauri, I can't invest $1 million in a charity where the founder doesn't even work there. I'll tell you what, he got that I told him, if you donate another $500,000, do you know how many lives you can save? I don't want to pay my salary out of that. I don't feel good about it. So he said, you know what, Lauri, I'm going to give you $1 million for the charity, and I'm going to give you $250,000 to support your salary for however long you need it. And you got to pay me back the $250,000. I'll make it a 30-year loan. If you don't have the money in 30 years, we'll talk. So what he was doing was, okay, now you can't play the guilt on me because it's a loan. I'm not giving it to you.
Yeah.
So he kind of tricked me, and he's like, okay, I'm going to give you $1,250,000, quit your job. So I quit my job, and I show up, and we went from 6 beds to 106 beds overnight, and it just keeps on happening. That warehouse that was sitting there empty, because we had the 100-bed facility, but the actor wanted the warehouse. God only knows why, because we got to change zoning.
Yeah.
The NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. It's not in a residential zone.
Right.
The infrastructure, air conditioning, heating, kitchens, bathrooms, right? So it's a multi-million-dollar thing. So it just sits there, and I'm trying to get rid of it. Like, a movie place could lease it. Another place could sublease it, maybe a church. Nobody will take it. I'm getting like, what the heck? It's $9,000 a month. Fast forward 2 years later, 2 years. God doesn't always work on my time. 2 years later, I get this thing in the mail from the Department of Mental Health in Los Angeles. We are looking for a couple of agencies to do crisis residential treatment programs for people that are in need, at risk of suicide, mental health crisis. In order to get this grant, it's $2.5 million in capital, $2.5 million a year. You have to have a building leased for 20 years that isn't in use. And I'm like, is there other idiots out there that have a building that's not used for 20 years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Could I be the only one maybe? So I'm like, this is crazy that they even stated it like that, because I've got this empty building. So I wrote back and I, submitted the grant, and lo and behold, we get the award letter. And I call my friend Kelly that does grants with me, and I'm like, Kelly, we got the $2.5 million. And she's like, Lauri, that's not $2.5 million. That's $2.5 million in capital and $50 million in operations. That's 20 years. And it actually went up since then. So now we've got a hospital there. So if you look at it, like since I started the charity, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and started giving back, and helping the girls out there, things just start happening. And am I in fear? Yes, that's my whole book. Everything my head is saying is in italics. Are you crazy? This is nutty. You don't have time for this. This is too far. You live in Orange County. Why would you do this? And I just say yes. That's my book, right? I'm just going to say yes and see what happens. Let's play with the universe. And like I always say to everyone, if you're like, when you're giving to your friends and your family and you're a good person, you have personal karma, right? And you have personal karma in your life, which means everything's good. It's not always good. Bad stuff could happen. But in general, you feel good about your life and yourself. But just like our body has like a heart that's pumping blood and our lungs are breathing air through us, we just kind of take it for granted, right? Well, I think the universe works like that. When you start to give out of your personal sphere to the community, to the universe.
To people you don't know.
People you don't know. You're not going to have any get back from this. Nothing's coming back.
Yeah.
You're not going to gain anything. You're just giving to give because you care and you want to be the change you want to see in the world, right? So you just start giving. All of a sudden, the universe recognizes you as an organ that's pumping. Like, hey, Tim's an organ. He's giving to the universe. We need to feed him with oxygen and blood and keep on giving to him so he keeps on going. So the minute I started giving back, it was insane what started happening, the miracle after miracle. And that's why I'm writing the book, because people are like, Lauri, how do you do this? And I'm like, I don't do anything. I just wake up in the morning, have 4 shots of espresso, as you can tell by the pace of my talking, and I wait to see what he's bringing next time, right? And when he brings it, I know, or she or it. When it comes to me, I know, oh, I've been given another assignment. So what I do on the assignment, don't panic, just do the next indicated thing.
But you still, the next assignment, you always find yourself going back to that panic fear mode, but you're like, wait a second, I've been here before. I want to push through it.
I'm a humanoid. I'm going to have all the stuff you have.
Yeah.
Right? Saying, no, you can't do it. No, it's too
Well,
much.
I read something
Now it's
recently. We have
yeah.
90,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
And we only have 3,000 new thoughts a day. So we sit there and just recirculate the 87,000 thoughts over and over and over again. So this is a way of like getting you out of that.
I identify my thoughts in the new book as my committee.
Yeah.
And at one point in the beginning of all this, I stopped to take a listen to what was going on in my head and review what committee members could stay and what committee members had to go. All fired. None of you guys are any good. You know what I mean? So I just let them play in the background, like as if they're shoppers in a store. You know what I mean? Just passing me by.
Yeah.
And pretty much try and just go forward no matter what and tell the universe, you know what? I'm going to just do the next indicated thing and the next indicated thing and the next. And what happens is crazy. So
not to make this religious, because
Yeah.
it's not. It's really
it's
you
George
live
Burns.
you
Yeah.
live a life of spirituality. And I want to make a distinction. Religion is for all the people that are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for the people that have been to hell. Right? And so I think when you really look at your story, and I want to get more into it, I think that's a really big thing for you. But I wanted to jump back because you started this with the call that you got 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I get that call and it's like, we've got you on a list. And I'm like, what list? You know, I applied for one of my family members, but somehow I end up on this list of foster parents. And the lady said, well, we've got this kid. You've got an open room. You can come today. It was Friday. You can come Monday. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I wanted to get over there before they find my record. Oh, that's a prostitute girl you turned down like 10 years ago. Oh my God. So I get my driver's license. I get in the car. I go over to the children's agency. And for the first time in my life, I'm standing on the other side of the door. And I have a moment when she walks out that it doesn't make sense that a person like me could be chosen to do something like this. But I'm here to tell you, when you step into the place you're supposed to be, your purpose, you start listening, nothing makes sense anymore. It's all miracles. So she's 15. She's beautiful. I bring her home. My daughter's 15. And things just started going crazy. Like kids keep on coming into my life. Now, here's the thing. I had just bought a brand new 3-bedroom house. I don't know if you want me to go through that story, but that was crazy, right?
Sure.
I just bought.
Yes.
So, I'm like,
Because this is, do have a real estate background. When I heard this story, I was laughing. I was laughing.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's hear about
okay,
it.
all right. And you got a lot of real estate people
Yeah.
listening. So, I'm, pretty much grew up in juvenile hall, group homes in Orange County, and I graduated my GED when I went to schlep to the GED class with a friend, and I didn't want to be bored, so I took it, passed it. It's just like, I didn't know what I was doing. So when I get sober, get my daughter back, and I tell my daughter, let's try and buy a house. I think I was making $2,000 a month. This is the 80s. So I said, let's spend $1,000 and send the other $1,000 away to some remote bank where I can't get to it, so we don't keep on going to Del Taco or whatever. Let's try and save some money. She agrees. We save $10,000 because I'm impatient, and we start going out to look for a house. And we go to this brand new home dealer. I think it was Kaufman Road, down in Rancho Santa Margarita. And we walk through the office, and you know how you got to go through the office to see the 3 models? But I'm dressed in like a wife beater, torn up jeans, and work boots. And I'm young. You know what I mean? I don't look like I'm ready to buy a house. And I don't feel like I'm ready to buy a house. So we go into the models, and I fall in love with this house, but I'm scared to tell my daughter. She's been through so much, hardship. She was 4 when I got sober, but she's still, So I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to get her hopes up. So we would come back and look at that home over and over and over again until the ladies in the new home building office were like, hey, Lauri, hey, Summer. They knew our names, right? Because we're coming so much. Coming to play in that house again? Yeah, we'll be back out. We just go in for a while. On my way out, the lady goes, look, Lauri, it's $10,000 off today. You know how they do those kind of bonuses?
Sure.
If you buy a house today, you'll get $10,000 off. Now, she's been watching me. This is another plant from the universe. She's been watching me. The universe knows what's going to happen if I get this house, right? This is before the first kid, right? So she said, go home and get your taxes. Bring them back to me. I'm going to teach you how to buy a house. So we sit down with my tax folder, and she starts showing me my dependents and how I could switch them and get more money back, and then I would write it off with the principal for the house. The interest for the house later on when I did my taxes, and it would all net out the same. And I'm like, oh my God, I could do this. So I'm scared, but I'm signing the paperwork for a 3-bedroom house, right? There's just Summer and I. My older daughter is now 18, the one whose mom died. So now we watch our house be built. And it's just amazing. Now, when they receive the call from social services that there's this kid and I'm on the list, we've got the third room all decorated for a girl in case Summer has a friend spend the night. And you've got a girl over there. She has never had a mom, they said. She was raised by her dad, sexually abused. And I'm like, it's 2 days before Christmas, even though I'm a Jew. Like, it's all the same thing to me. It's 2 days before Christmas. You've got a little girl over there that's never had a mom. And I've got a brand new house with a room all decorated, brand new for a girl. And I get to be her mom? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, all this was a setup so we could get right here, right now, to pick up this one kid. They say to save one life is to save the world. You've heard that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I bring her back, and you would think that's the end of it, right? You would think that's the end of it. But what happens is, because I'm so grateful to be alive, when you've lived in the kind of darkness that I've lived in, being kidnapped, having horrific things happen to me where I thought my life was going to end, the stupidest things make me happy. So I'm happy all the time. So I keep on getting promoted at work. I go from like customer engineer to systems engineer to building systems to network engineer, setting up the network, to selling the gigs with the guys, to director of IT services, to owning the flippin' consulting company, right? And every time this happens, I'm like, what's going on? You know what I mean? It's uncomfortable for me. I'm not used to this. But
almost like imposter. You're like, they're going to find me out. And all this is
oh
going to go
my God,
in.
and they did find me out. It's a later story when I
Okay.
turn up in People magazine and it's all over the world. Yeah, everyone knew. But at this point, right, I walk out of my house one day in this little Coffin and Broad neighborhood, and I knew all the neighbors because we all put in our lawns together. And I'm like, why is there for sale signs everywhere in the neighborhood? For you real estate people, I have no idea, right?
Prices went up.
Yeah.
It's
So
time
my
to
neighbor
sell.
tells me, Brian, he's like, Lauri, our homes have went up in price, right? So now you sell it and you take that money that you made and you buy a bigger house. And I'm thinking, why the heck do I need a bigger house? It's like my dream house. I never could have imagined I would even buy a house. But I took directions. I took the for sale sign. I'm talking to George Burns, of course, because he's my guy. And I'm like, George, I don't know. They say do God's will. How would you know what God's will is? Who tells us what God, if we knew God's will, that would be really easy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you what, this is my dream house. If you want for me to sell it within a month. If it doesn't sell within a month, George, I'm taking it out. Now I got to tell you, I don't care where you pray to, God will pick up his mail. Because George Burns was alive when I started praying to him, dead towards the end, but it didn't matter. The universe kept on responding. So I put that for sale sign in. 3 weeks later, my house sells for more than any other house in the neighborhood. I have no idea why. So I'm driving through the canyon where I live on my motorcycle. I'm riding through, and I see these big flags.
Whoa.
There's new-
Driving on a motorcycle?
Yeah, my first car was a motorcycle.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
I'm like driving through the canyon in Trabuco, and I see these really big homes with like the flags out front. And I think, you know what? When I get my own, place, now my house sold, right? So there's people moving into my place. So I have to get a little place and decorate it. I'm going to go in there, see how they're decorating. So when I find a place, because I got to find a place quick now, I know how to decorate it. I walk in, the lady who told me to get my folder now works at Centex Homes, right?
Same woman.
Yeah. Oh my God, I walk in, I didn't even recognize her, and she's like, Lauri, oh my God, I'm going to sell you another house. And I'm like, not in this neighborhood. These are like 4, 5, 6 bedroom houses. I'm like, I'm just coming to look at the paint and the decorating, and I'll be right out. And she's like, go home and get your taxes. Go home and get your taxes. Of course, I own the company. So I'm like, why is this happening, right?
Yeah.
So I've gotten to the mode of stopping. I don't think about why is this happening anymore. I know it's a breadcrumb. It's leading to something. I don't even know what. At this time, I didn't know that. I was scared to death. I'm buying a 5-bedroom house. She's helping me do it again. This lady, this angel, like an earthborn angel, God put in my path. She doesn't even know she's part of the story, unless maybe she's watching your podcast today, right? So I buy this 5-bedroom house, and all of a sudden the floodgates open. 46 kids later, I'm just like, and now I realize
46 kids later, you've raised 46 foster kids.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, are these are your family? So you have 46 kids. Are you talking to them weekly?
Yeah. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Like I check in with them. Like Chelsea just called me the other day. I haven't heard from her in 3 years. I'm like, Chelsea, what's up? She told me like I'm working at this new firm and I'm over here. You know what I mean? But she was living with her boyfriend. But then there's other ones that I talk to every week, and some of them are like, Mom, I'm coming to Orange County. Can I stay there? Because they're all over the place now. They're married. They've got kids. I've got more than 20 grandkids. I can't even track them anymore because my kids, they're multiplying.
Yeah.
But What was I going to say about it? I don't even. So, yeah, it just keeps on going and going and going. And I realize now, when I was a child, and I thought God hated me for something I did. And this is my true belief. When I was a little kid, I did something in a past life. I was a witch or something. I did something super, super bad. I don't know why I was even believing in reincarnation, but I was, and I still do now. I believed I had done something in a past life that needed to be fixed, and that's why I was here. And I was being punished for it, right? Now, when all these kids show up and my house is full with the same kids that I glommed onto when I was 13, I'm like, oh my God, you weren't punishing me. You were blessing me. Like everything I went through with my dad on the streets, I would do it all again to get right here, right now, because I live the most amazing life. If God said, do you want to switch lives with Tim right now? He lives in this huge house. He has this great life. No. I don't want to switch lives. I have the most amazing freaking life I could ever imagine.
So stop for a second there, because the name of your book is Punished for Purpose.
Right.
And we haven't got into the details, and maybe people can go, or maybe we do. But, you know, raising an 8-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son, there's just this, I have this natural default setting. I want to try to I want to avoid any disappointment or challenges or whatever. But when I heard your story again, just for the listeners, the first 30 minutes, I had a hard time listening to it, right? I mean, to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can have her on my podcast. And then 3 minutes into your news story, I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's being prepared, right? We have these ideas of all these terrible things, but without you going through those things, you wouldn't be you. And Chris and I were talking, you're like a modern day Marvel hero. You're like a superhero that went through like the darkest times to get to the light. And do you think, I mean, we talked a little about this. Do you think that to get to the darkest times, it's almost like a pendulum? You wouldn't be able to be as great as you are. And I don't want to say great. You wouldn't be able to be the instrument that God or Lauri Burns would have you be if you hadn't been through all that darkness.
Right. That's true. So these days I hang out with my rabbi a lot, you know, and because they help me with the charity and stuff like that. And he said to me, he's like one of those Brooklyn rabbis with the black coat on and the white. So he grew up in that, kind of like if you're Italian, you're just Italian. Well, he just grew up in Jewish, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't fully understand it. But he said to me one day, he said, Lauri, would it be better to be like a regular person, you think, just growing up in a happy, healthy life, or someone like you that's been through all this stuff? And I only had to think for a second. I'm like, of course, I'd choose the normal life. And he's like, but Lauri, don't you understand? Like swinging on a swing, every time you push back, you go higher and higher and higher. And you have the reach to save so many lives. Like so many lives because of everything you've been through. And the normal person, I don't even know if they could save a life. For the amount that you went down, you can now come up and save lives at a level that I don't think you're even aware of.
There's a story that I heard you talk about, the girl that you got that was having night terrors or something in the bathroom on the floor. And that's where you just connected, because a normal person would be like, hey, let's hug her, let's do whatever. But you, having gone through what you've gone through, how did you handle that situation?
Yeah, so at the time I had like 5 little girls living in my house. I had a 2-bedroom, 2 beds in one room, and then the other rooms, right? And one of the girls was kind of new. So, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard like a noise outside of my bedroom. So I opened my bedroom door, and one of the girls is in the bathroom on the floor, banging her head and crying. And I realized that her mom left her in a drug house where she was severely abused by the men that were there. And she gets flashbacks at night, right? So she's banging her head on the wall, crying. And I go into approach her. I could just see the silhouette because it's dark in the hallway. And all of a sudden I knew, don't flip on the light. Don't touch her. Don't baby her. Just be there with her. And in that moment, I was 12 in the bathroom back in New York. And that's how I knew. And it was like, oh my God. In that moment, I knew everything I knew because of what I went through. That was the moment where I realized, oh my God, you put me through this not because you hate me, because you love me. because you wanted me to do this for you. And I'm here to do it for you. You just keep on bringing them and I'll just keep on taking them because this is everything to me. It is everything. So I go in that bathroom and the girls came out of their rooms and they all knew. They all knew exactly what to do because we'd all been through it and we were just all there. And then she like let out this big gasp and she reached out and put her arms around us. And it was like, okay, got it. It took me a while.
I literally just saw
it.
the scene in the movie for that.
Yeah.
Like that's such a powerful scene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I just finished the movie script and it gets to the downfall pretty quickly because I don't think people can handle all of it. But when it starts to turn around, it's like, I don't care how far down you think you've gone. I don't care what you think you did that was so bad. I don't care. And there are people out there going, you just don't know what I did. You know, God only knows, you know, in their family, what did you do that you think is so bad? I'm sorry, not happening. You can resolve it. There is something you're supposed to do with that bad thing. There's something you're supposed to do. And let me tell you, when there's people out there that don't talk about it, when I talk about what I'm talking about right now, being a prostitute, working the streets, everything that happens, girls constantly come up to me and go, God, I've been through stuff like that, but I could never talk about it. I really appreciate your honesty. Really? You can't talk about it? Then it's yours. You're sitting in the ashes. It's not about you, what you went through. Yeah, you did it. You made bad decisions, whatever. It's not about you. Now it's about what you do with it. Because when you start to say, hey, I made a mistake, this thing happened, and it was tragic. Like I was semi-suicidal, whether it's a business thing, a family thing, like it was killing me. If you're going to sit in the killing me zone, that's not good. If you start to talk about it and say, look, if anyone else out there is going through this and needs help, I know I've been there and it can get better. Let me show you how. When you start to do that, the ambers start to light up and you realize, oh my God, that thing I went through wasn't so bad because now I'm helping all these people. That's how great leaders are born, out of something tragic, right?
It's almost like that saying, until you're willing to tell your story,
right?
Your true story, your authentic, vulnerable story, you can no longer get out of being a victim to the story.
Oh, yeah. And that's putting it lightly. You're stuck.
Right.
You're going to spend your whole life stuck, maybe die and be stuck again, be reborn. I don't know what happens after that, right? But get out of it and start using it. You went through it for a reason, even though you made the decisions you made. When you're embarrassed about it and taking it personally, it's all about ego. But if you let go of that and you go, okay, I'm ready to start talking about it to help other people, put the people in front of me, they will show up. And you'll be grateful for what you went through. Even your family, if they were hurt, will be grateful because they'll see they can help other people, right? So I want to tell you what happened with my dad, right?
This is like, I mean, I think, yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of the story.
Yeah.
Like, honestly. So, yeah, please.
It is the end of the movie.
And
yeah.
it's like amazing because let's get into it.
So, you know, my dad abused me, abused my sister, abused my mom. And then he almost gets caught. And instead of facing up to it and saying, I did what I did, he hides a gun, tells the police I have it. I get put in the ward for the criminally insane, right? I hate my dad. I hated my dad. Like everything that about me was impacted by, I wasn't pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. My own dad didn't love me. God doesn't love me, right? So I hated my dad forever. And then I got sober. I started going through therapy. And then my kids started coming in. I started seeing my kids, the foster kids, their parents were kids that didn't get help. And then they, went into a new generation of hurt people, right? So I was like, I tell my kids, no, we don't hate your dad or mom. We want to help them, right? Let me see if I can help them get sober, right? So through doing this and going to therapy, I realized maybe my dad never had anyone that loved him. Because how could someone who is truly loved treat people like this? And I heard what Gandhi said about be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought, God, be the change is pretty serious. It's not like think like the change or act like the change. It's exist like the change, right? So I'm like, if I'm going to exist like the change, I'm taking on the hardest person, my dad. At that point, I was in my late 20s. I start writing letters to my dad about the good things.
And hadn't had any contact with him for how long?
Years. I would see him once in a while for a dinner. He was an airline pilot.
Okay.
Right? So once in a while, he'd call in, say, I'm in town. Can you girls have dinner with me? Right? So we'd have dinner, but it was very, robotic almost, right? And so I realized, oh my God, I started writing letters to my dad about, you are an engineer, I'm an engineer. Your sense of humor, I've got that. You know what I mean? There's so much I'm grateful for you. And I never expected a response.
Was that difficult to write those letters? Or
No,
once
because
you,
I was empowered by being the change.
Yes.
Because I saw if I could be the change
but you
for the
like
hardest
literally
guy,
have to just get on the other side of that line. Like, I'm not going to use this story, and your story changed so much. Like, I need to be that change, which is so easy to say, but that's a really hard thing to confront.
Yeah, there was a lot of little bits that led up to that. And one of them was listening to Dr. Lauri. Remember Dr. Lauri used to be on the radio?
Yeah, Dr. Lauri
And some lady
Schlesinger.
called in. She said, my sister never sends Christmas presents, and I've always sent them to her kids, so now I'm going to stop. And Dr. Lauri was like, oh, your sister's a B, so now you're going to be a B. That sounds like a great idea. You know what I mean? I started thinking,
Yeah.
all these little things started getting in my head, like, I could be the change I want to see. It wasn't about my dad. I didn't care if
Right.
he ever responded.
Right.
So I start writing letters, sending them out regularly, not getting a response. And I'm on a cruise ship to Mexico with a bunch of my foster kids. And it's docking. We're coming back into San Pedro, whatever it is. And as it docks, my cell phone turns on. And I'm also in the middle of writing my book. And I'm in the dark part of my book, like in the middle, right? Where
Yeah.
things are going really bad. And I'm almost being killed on the street. And there's a lot of thoughts, that I went through with my dad in the book. And I get this, my phone starts ringing. I think it's work, right? So I pick it up, thinking Northrop Grumman, they're calling about some technical thing. And there's a message. This is Dr. Green in Florida at a hospital. Your dad's with us. There's been a serious incident, and I need you to call me immediately. And I'm like, oh no. I sat there with the phone. Like, I walked, everyone was like on the disembarkment line, and I walked over to the big window by the ocean and just like hit my knees. And I'm like, Dad, an incident? I don't know that I can handle this. I don't know what it could be, And I called the number. I was scared to death. And I said, this is Lauri. I've been on a cruise ship. That's why I haven't returned your call. You have my dad? And he said, yeah, your dad tried to take his life. He says he did bad things and he deserves to die. He won't talk. He said he had no family until a couple days ago. He said he had one daughter and gave us your number. Now that was the letters. He would not have given them my number. He would have just left it, no family, right? He won't talk. He won't see what he did. Do you know what he did? And I said, yeah. And that was it. Yeah. Well, I could put you on the phone with your dad, but he's in super bad shape right now. I just want you to be ready for this. Do you want to talk to your dad? Everything inside of me said, no, I don't want to talk to my dad.
Sure.
But I said, yeah, put him on. And he got on the phone and he said, how dare you? How dare you love me? How dare you forgive me after everything I've done to you? I don't deserve your love. I deserve to die. And I said, Dad, don't you realize it's everything that I've went through in my life that gets me right here, right now? And I'm looking at my kids on the line. I have the most beautiful, amazing life I could ever imagine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And you were the guy to get me here. I love you, Dad. I forgive you. It's been a long time, and I wouldn't have made it any other way. I needed you to get here. And he started crying. And the guy got back on the phone, the doctor, because my dad was crying. Never heard my dad cry before. And he said, I can't release your dad. He's a danger to himself and others. The only way I'm going to release your dad is to release him into your custody. And I thought, oh my God, the man that put me in the mental institution, I get to take him out of the mental institution. And it was a very brief thought process. I read the story about Joseph in the Bible. I don't read Hebrew, so I'm reading your book because I want the English version.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, Joseph would have done this.
Yeah.
Gandhi would have done this.
Joseph
Jesus
sold
would
into
have done
slavery,
this.
right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I'm like, yes, this is absolutely about being the change. Yes, I'll take my dad. So scared as I was, I told the kids, you know what? Dad, oh no, I didn't tell the kids yet. I went to the airport to get my dad.
Do they all
It's like,
know the story of you and your dad?
oh, of course.
They
yeah,
know
because
everything,
it's been
right?
all over the newspapers. I've been all
Yes.
over the news. I'm in People magazine. Yeah, so they know the story, right? I go to pick up my dad at the airport, and he goes, we're loading his suitcase into the trunk of my car, and he's like, you just don't get it, do you? And I'm like, get what, Dad? What's to get? And he's crying again. I'm like, what? And he goes, you know your Grandma Anna? And Grandma Anna was his mom back in the city in New York. She spoke mostly Yiddish, but she was a wonderful lady. That's my Grandma Anna. I said, of course I remember Grandma Anna. She's already passed on, you know? He said, Grandma Anna was my foster mom. And you're saving all these damn foster kids? And I'm like, oh my God, my dad was a foster kid. Like I had no idea. And that's when you realize, holy moly, could this get any more paramount? Like my whole life comes right back here. I called home. I'm like, my dad's coming home with me. He's going to sleep downstairs. He's going to be the oldest foster kid in the house tonight. You know what I mean? And we're just going to love him up until he can learn to love himself. And yeah.
That's right. He's the oldest foster kid in the house.
And the kids, especially my son Zachary, was so good with him. You know what I mean? And we just loved him up. And he left there changed. And I'm not saying when he came, he was not the best guy. You know, he wasn't abusive, but he was angry.
Yeah.
By the time he left, you know, no matter how angry, I told the kids, when he gets loud, we get quieter.
Yeah.
You know? And I made him matzo ball soup a lot. That seemed to soothe over a lot of stuff. But yeah. And now my dad and I are so close. I just bought my dad a house. He's 90. He was losing his house like 2 months ago in West Palm Beach. And his friends were calling me. I'm the only one that's close to him. So they're like, Lauri, you got to help him. He's 90. He's not doing well. He's losing his house. He had a little apartment. It's not a house. He had a teeny little apartment. So I went to West Palm Beach and I met with him and I said, you know, my daughter right now graduated Columbia, got married, and they moved down to Sarasota, different end of Florida, right? And my grandkids are there. And I've always wanted, like, rather than stay in a hotel, get a little condo or buy something there, right? So I sat with my dad and I said, look, I want to buy a house by summer so I could be with the grandkids. If I can do that, it's probably going to take me 6 months. Do you want to live in the house? And he says, oh, that would be wonderful, Lauri, if I could, you could make a house or, you know, someplace where I could be where there's family nearby. So, and understand my dad's a good guy, you know, that stuff that happened has all, you know, he's had his own transformation. So lo and behold, I go from West Palm Beach to Sarasota for 2 days and I go out with a realtor all day and she's showing me all these used places. And I walk into a new home dealer at the end of the day and they say, we have one house that just fell out of escrow and is available now. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
How much? Yes. So I buy a 4-bedroom house, and about a month ago, I got to move my dad into the new house. And when he walked in, you know, my dad's he doesn't show his emotions much. He's very closed. And when we walked into this house, he starts heading towards the little bedrooms, and he's like, okay, which one's mine? And I'm like, no, Dad, you're in the master bedroom. They're all yours. You're in the master bedroom. I had the whole house decorated, and I had his room all decorated with things that I know he likes. And he walked in there, and, you know, you couldn't see it on him, but I could feel it. You couldn't see any emotion. It wasn't like he jumped up in joy and said, thank you. But being able to do that was just like, I couldn't have imagined ever doing anything more, right?
It's interesting. I'm just listening to this and so many thoughts are going, but who has the opportunity to not just confront, but actually close the circle and help the father that was abusive change because he was abused, right? It's like those opportunities I feel like can only happen with somebody that's been willing to say yes, because I don't know people in this, like when I hear your story, and I hope that everybody's hearing your story, it's like, share your story. Yeah. Don't be ashamed of it, right? Like, don't be the victim to the story anymore, because you could have been the victim. It's like how you respond in the ashes thing. I love that. Like metaphorically, you're in the ashes, but you got to actually change and turn those to ambers, right? Mm-hmm. And let your light really. So it's just amazing to have those, to hear this, because I think people out there, and I don't know, I'm sure you've heard, many are called, but few are chosen. Right?
And I don't know if that's true. I think many are called and few listen. Mm-hmm.
So it's
I would go that way.
Yeah, many are called and few listen. But everybody out there like can do more, can do good, but they have to start listening to that voice, and they have to be aware and understand.
They already know. Most of them know what they're supposed to do.
I know.
Like, people come up to me all the time. I've always thought about, really? You've always thought about what and never done it?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that. Whatever you're thinking about, do it already. Do it, yeah. My God, could you imagine if we saw our life before we were born and they said, look, these things are going to happen to you, these bad things, and you're either going to cower down in these bad things and close up, and we'll repeat your life again when you come back. Or these bad things are going to happen, and instead of being selfish and surrounded by ego, you're going to take the bad things that happen to you and you're going to go, okay, who else has this happened to? I want to help you. Yeah. I want to help you get out of it. I want to help you not cower. I want to help you by being verbal about it, by being the person. Do you know, when you see me sit here and talk about, like, I was a prostitute, does it look like I'm ashamed?
No.
No, because I'm not, because it's not my story, it's God's story.
Yeah.
It's the lesson that I was given in this life to help others, right?
Yeah.
So now, like, I've got 180 beds throughout Riverside, Orange County, and LA, and over 100 employees. And we have girls coming in from the street every day, and we're saving lives. And then we have the CEO of Allied Universal. I don't know if you know this, is our biggest donor, Steve Jones, and his wife, Stacy. They've allowed us to put all the girls through school. So guess what? Half the counselors that I employ here in Orange County are girls we save from the street and put through school. You know, so it just keeps on going and going. But could you imagine if I had stayed like, this is my secret? I was a prostitute. I was almost killed. And how sad is that? I'm just going to go to therapy for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I mean, it's just such an inspirational story,
Yeah.
but for all of us individually, we can all do more. We can all find a purpose that's bigger. You know, it's interesting because so many of us spend so much of our time building up wealth and bank accounts and this false security, which you can't take with you anyway. So you're like, I'm going to spend 90% of my time, and I'm taking this to heart because I feel like I have a bigger purpose that sometimes I hide, or I'll do enough, but I know that I could do more. And I think everybody feels that way to some extent.
Right.
You talked about God box, and I think it's an interesting talk about your God box.
Yeah. So when I was newly sober, I was just, you know, when you get sober, I don't know if anyone listening to this like was using or drinking alcohol and then they get sober. It's like every problem you haven't handled for the past 10 years is now like, handle it right now. And you have this like, oh my God, everything that I have to fix right now. And I was a wreck. And some guy at one of my meetings, an old guy from New York, said, look, you got to turn it over. Get a box. I don't care if it's a shoe box, whatever it is. Write a note about what it is that's bothering you and put it in, give it to God, whoever his God was, right? He was probably a Catholic guy. He said, once you put it in the box, you forget about it. You're thinking about it again. You remember it's in his box. It's assigned to him. You forget about it, right? So I started doing that. I had a shoebox in my little recovery home closet. And then later on in life, my daughter Chelsea made me a box in woodshop, which just sat on my desk. And it became the God box when I was stressed, when I didn't think something was going to go right. And I learned the hard way, don't write instructions. Lord knows, don't write instructions because you are limited. Just put the one thing, right? Having problems with your wife, just put your wife's name in the box, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it will resolve. So I started writing notes to George because George was my guy, right? Which is the name of my new book, Notes to George.
Yeah.
And what happened, like I never go back in the box and look at the stuff, but one day my box fell and I happened to look at it and it said, I need girls for the house. That was our first team project house that we built in Lake Forest. I wrote that note before the house was ready, and I remembered it. The girls started coming so fast, I had to put them in my own house. I'm like, the house isn't ready yet. Yeah, the note timing could have been better, you know, but it turns out that everything that I wrote about, everything I was worried about that I turned over to the universe just actively resolved.
When you let go of it.
Yeah, when I let go of it, when I stopped stressing about it.
But that's kind of a hard thing. The whole self-fulfilling prophecy, what you're afraid of ends up happening.
Yeah.
So if you can't let go of it, you can't get away from it, right? You can't get out of it.
If you can't let go of it, you can't get out of it. Yeah. Well, you can't see the other side of it because our
Right.
thoughts are usually negative. Like we immediately go to the world. What's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Yeah.
That's what's cycling. That's what's keeping us up all night.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got this from the thing you listened to, but I started waking up at 3 a.m. And I say this all the time. I started waking up at 3 a.m. There will be people listening to this that are going, what?
Yeah.
I'm waking up at 3 a.m, right? Because it happens all the time. I started waking up at 3 a.m. By this point, I had 17 kids that I had raised, right? And I told my mentor over and over, God wants me to do more. I know God wants me to do more. I'm here for something else. And she always said, well, you got all these kids. And it's like, no, those kids are my family. I met them in a group home when I was 13. I enjoy that. There's something else I'm born for, and I don't know what it is. When I start waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it's the sprinklers. So I look at the system, it's not going off at 3, it's going off at like 6. So I start talking about it all the time because I'm tired and I have a long commute. And someone said to me, the spirits talk the loudest at 3 a.m. Everyone knows that. They call it the spiritual hour, some call it the witching hour. It's like when the veil between our world and the other worlds is thinnest. If you're waking up at 3 a.m., there's something you need to do. If you don't know what it is, you better find out. You better ask and ask and ask that you be shown what you're supposed to do. So I started putting notes to George in that box. When I started waking up at 3 a.m, like actively, what do you need me to do? And that's when I started learning kids were leaving the foster care system to homelessness. 60% of the trafficking victims in the United States were from foster care. And I started seeing that even the homeless shelters, if you investigate the childhood of the people in the homeless shelters, they're group home kids, foster kids, street kids, you know what I mean? That just didn't get help. And I was on fire because I thought it was my bad luck. I thought God hated me. I just have bad luck. That's why all this stuff happened to me. Oh no, this was the plan. This is how it's supposed to happen. This is how it's going to happen for all of them. And I was on fire. I got on LegalZoom, started a little charity, thought we'd help a couple of kids, and the rest is history. The rest is the movie, the book, right? When I got on the path, things blew up.
Go back to when you got on the path, because you talk about one moment where somebody gave you a ride.
Yeah. Okay.
So because like every day we're confronted with a million things. If we're not looking for opportunities, and when you said that, I'm like, could the ride have really been that moment when it changed? And was that really it? Because if that's it, we all need to be more actively looking for opportunities. If you got a quarter and a car, you can give a nickel and a ride. Okay. Yeah. But here's a scoop. So when I started working for the call agency, you know, whatever you call it, like a escort. Yeah.
The first night they sent me to Laguna Niguel, right? It was Christmas time. I arrive on the street. My sister's driving me. I didn't have a car. I was living in a motel on Harbor Boulevard. I was a single mom with a kid, right? And every house has Christmas lights except for the house I'm about to walk into. It's dark, right? So I tell my sister, oh my God, I'm scared to death. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, if I go into this house and I don't come out, call someone, right? Get help. So she's waiting outside, and I go up to the door, and like I hear this whoosh sound as I approach the door. Even the porch light isn't on. And the door flies open, and it's this crazy looking guy in a wheelchair with like long Albert Einstein like hair. And I look through the house, and it's like barren. And then I see Vietnam War stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, there's guns in this house. And he's like, get in the house. Let me just say, within a minute, I was so rigid and unsexual, he threw me out. Like I failed prostitution, like from the get-go. He threw me out and gave me some money and said, get out of here. He could tell I was a kid.
Yeah.
He was like, what are you doing here? He was calling for some, you know, I'm a kid shows up to his door and I'm scared to death. So he throws me out. But that guy hunts me down for years trying to find out where I'm at. What happened was Tom was an abused kid that left home when he was 14. His parents used to make him sit on the floor and eat with the dog while the rest of the family ate at the table. And he ran away from home, ran the streets with a bunch of misfits, joined Vietnam, was at the top of his battalion or whatever when he got shot with shrapnel, and he ended up in a wheelchair. And now he's in this house in Laguna Niguel, like lonely, desperate, and calling prostitutes because he doesn't, you know, really have any people, anyone that he's close to. And he's angry, right? So he starts trying to find me, thinking if I could save this kid, then I could somehow save myself, right? Because she's like me. So he used to come and see me on the streets and try and talk to me about, you know, Lauri, you should go to college, you should clean up. And I was like, no, Tom, no, you don't understand. I don't have childcare. I don't have, what am I going to sit in college? I don't even have an income. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I have no other choice except for just leave me alone. So on the night that I'm in the canyon and that guy comes down the road, saves me, takes me to the hospital, the next day I call Tom and I'm like, Tom, I need help. He was the only person left that would answer my phone call. This angry man was the only one left that would help me. And he didn't even want to help me. He said, Lauri, I will take you wherever you want to go, but I'm not giving you any money. And I'm like, okay, Tom, pick me up. And he took me to the place and then my life got on that path, right? When I started the Teen Project charity in 2007, and we bought that little first house in Lake Forest, I put a sign on the door, the Fauntleroy House, right? And that's his last name, right? And then it says some Shakespearean quote about light after the rain, right? And he didn't know it existed. Girls went through there, lives were saved. At some point I said, hey, Tom, I want you to come over and see that house. And he's like, Lauri, I'm not into kids. I don't want to see the house. Let's meet at Starbucks. He wants to talk about computers. He's actually the one that taught me about computers, right? He's the one that got me. He had little knickknacks all over his house of computer parts, and he taught me to put together my first computer. He got me on that path as well, right? So he goes, finally I go, Tom, just meet me at the house just for a minute, and then we'll go to Starbucks. He goes, 5 minutes at the house, Lauri. Okay, fine, right? He really doesn't want to go there. He rolls up to the front of this beautiful house. It's like a brand new house, and sees that Fauntleroy house there and looks at me and goes, what is my name doing on this house? And I'm like, Tom, you saved my life. Like, I was out on the streets. I thought there was nothing left to save of me. There was nothing left to save. I was ready to die. That peanut of hope that you had, that maybe someday I could be somebody, was more than I ever could have conjured up inside myself. You saved my life, Tom. And he looked like he was going to cry, so he popped a wheelie and headed off to Starbucks because he doesn't do crying. And I'm like, oh my God. And we never spoke about it again. But here's a guy, destitute, alone, in this house, dark house, and his only people are hiring prostitutes that can spend time with him. And he saves a life. And I think of him, and I think of the man on the road that picked me up. They think they saved a life. No, they didn't save a life. It's like a rock hitting a still lake. When the rock hit the water, the ripple effect went on and on and on. They saved thousands of lives. And guess what? The girls that were saved, they're saving lives. It is infinity when you look at what's going to happen now. They set in motion something that didn't exist prior.
So that leads me to another thought real quick. Mm-hmm. So the end of Schindler's List, mm-hmm. when he pulls up and he's got the car and he basically just says, I could have saved more if I got rid of the car. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. I like watch and listen and observe you. It's like I feel that way with you. It's like you seem 100% committed to your purpose mm-hmm. and finding all these opportunities. And it's like you've raised 42 or 46 foster kids, mm-hmm. raised 62 million for your foundation. I feel like just getting started, written multiple books, finished your screenplay. Like people got to be thinking like, how do you have time to do anything?
4 shots of espresso.
And then you're up every morning at 3 a.m, like getting messages from, like how do you have time for, and what does the next 10 years look like for Lauri?
I don't know, right? Because I just wake up and wait for what's next. Like I just had a bunch of deaf people show up to my house and we had a meeting with sign language people. And I'm like, okay, we're going to open a place for deaf people. I call my chief operating officer. They need help too. But they came to my house. Like I don't plan anything. It's almost like people say, Lauri, they say to me all the time, how do you do all this? And it's like, I don't. I just wake up and I've already told the universe I'm on. They've already recognized me. It's already recognized me as an organ. So now I just keep on giving and giving. So I don't know what's next. And it's so funny that you say that Schindler's List thing, because I said, one time I was talking to the rabbi and I said, what's your biggest question to God? Because I thought this guy's grown up. Like if you look at the Jewish people in Brooklyn, which I can't even relate to, they grow up with like the Torah in their hands, reading God's word their whole life. It's not a religion for them. It's like a ethnicity for them, right? I said, so what's your biggest question? He said, is it enough? And I'm like, boom, right to Schindler's List.
Yeah,
people constantly come up to me like, you're such an angel. I'm like, I'm not such an angel. I'm surrounded by angels. I'm just an ordinary girl. I'm not a bad girl. I'm just an ordinary girl that's surrounded by angels, that's been hired and given assignments constantly. And I keep on taking the assignments and I don't worry about like the silly stuff like rent and stuff like that, because as long as I'm taking care of that, he takes care of me. And the more I take care of that, the more he takes care of me. Like I literally said, I'd like to buy a house in Sarasota someday. And I told a couple people that. A month later, I have a house in Sarasota. It's like, boom. You know what I mean?
But there's something like for every listener, because it's like, you are so unique. And maybe it makes me think of, and again, I'm not trying to get religious, but when Christ was going into the Garden of Gethsemane and he was going to, as part of the, the atonement or whatever, he was going to bleed from every pore for the sins of all mankind, because he was the only perfect person that could be the savior. He says something. He says, Father, if thou be willing, take this cup from me. Like the bitter cup of what he was about to do. And then he follows it up with, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Right. And you've gotten to the point where you're like, nevertheless, I don't have a will. Yeah. I'm here as a servant, as an instrument. I don't think 95% of the listeners, because they are worried about their rent and we are worried about our clubs and our schools and this and that. So it's like, it's a total shift that you're there where it's like, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And that's not easy for people. Just like we're talking about a little help. You're like a life committed to the change that you want to see in the world, it's amazing. It's inspirational.
When people say to me that you've done so much, it makes me feel uncomfortable.
I can
You know what I mean?
imagine. Yes.
It's not me. Okay, I started saying yes. And I
Yeah.
have true integrity. Like our whole charity has true integrity down to the penny, that everything goes right, because you have to keep that integrity in order to continue to be blessed, right? But I didn't do it. I can't take responsibility for getting that first house. It was the lady. The second house, it was the lady. The big place in LA was the man with the million. You know what I
Right,
mean? It was
right.
ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
But that's like
Right?
life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
For it, for him,
For the purpose.
Yeah.
So what do you say to all the people that are listening, or for anybody that has somebody that wants to send this to somebody that's like has no vision, has no hope, is in that dark despair time? Like, what do you say to those people?
You have to start sharing about what's going on with you. You have to start talking to people about it. You have to start disconnecting from it and stop taking it so personally. I know you've made bad decisions. I know bad things have happened. Maybe you've hurt people. And hurt people. It's just going to keep on going on and on. But step away from it. Start praying about it to whatever you pray to, right? It doesn't matter where you pray. God's going to pick up his mail. But just start telling the universe you're ready to do with this thing what it wants for you to do with it. And be sincere about it and just say it over and over and over. I'm ready to do what you'd have me do with it. When the universe starts telling you what to do with it, you will be freed from the pain you're in, and you'll actually be saving lives yourself.
When you find a girl or a kid that's not ready to make the change, but you know that this is a process, and you bring them in and you know that they're not prepared, like, how do you handle that? Like, how do you handle knowing that, like, okay, they're just not ready to own their story?
Yeah, that's a
and
hard
to start
one for
praying,
humans. Yeah.
Right?
It's
So
like
how do you...
it didn't take, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It did take. Yeah, you just not, sometimes you get to plant the seed, but you don't always see the flower grow. So if you read my book, when I get to the point where my life's changing, I'm like, I've got to find all these people that said one thing. Like, some people just said one thing to me and it never left my mind. And just with all those bad thoughts you talk about that are circulating, that thing was always there. So they were part of saving me, right? You may not see them being saved right now, but you are planting a seed and you need to know that. So when a girl walks out, I'm almost unemotional about it. People are like, how can you handle this? How can you handle this when the girls leave? It's like, look at the girl I just told you about that's on our executive team. She left twice, got kicked out for really bad things that she did. And now she's leading the way. She needed the story. If I didn't have the story, I wouldn't have the book. I wouldn't have the script, and I wouldn't have the life to share with other people to say. And you know what happens when I go out and tell my story? I'll go out and tell my story somewhere. 5 years later, I'm sitting somewhere. Some stranger walks up to me and goes, I heard your story. I always wanted to be a nurse, but I never had the means. But I heard your story, and I got on some online schooling thing, and I got this little grant, and I started going to school, and I'm a nurse. It's like, what? And it's insane how it keeps on happening. So I was talking at Lily Grossman's funeral, right, which is a really tough one. I know her parents, and she was trafficked, and just really sad. So we lost her, right? So I'm talking at her funeral. After I finished talking, a young girl comes up to me and goes, my mom died, but she said she had this book, and she was talking about you when she was alive. And when she died, I got all of her stuff and I found your book. So I started reading your book, and oh my God, I always wanted to be a psychiatrist, but I never thought I had it. But I started going to school. I'm almost done with my PhD. I'm actually gonna do, and I can't believe you knew Lily. Like, how did this happen? How are you standing at Lily's funeral? And I'm like, oh my God. So I ran to God told me to bring books that day. I'm like, I don't know why I would bring books to a funeral. It's not like I'm networking at the funeral. But all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God. And she brought all of her friends over and she's like, can you sign us all a copy? So we all got books going, right? Fast forward, I've got this girl, Zoe, calling me from the streets, 8 months pregnant, addicted to fentanyl and heroin. And fentanyl and methadone. Methadone's the thing you use to get off heroin. These are the worst two. And she's 8.5 months pregnant. Nobody will take her. We like saving lives, especially lives that like are at the brink, like she's not going to make it without you. So I start calling around and my medical doctor is like, well, you need to get her assessed. take her and see how the baby's doing. So I have a doctor down at Fashion Island. She does it all for free. She sees our girl. She goes down there. The doctor says she's fine. You know, the baby's fine. She's alive. The girl's addicted, but baby's alive. So I bring it back to my medical doctor. Can we take her in? Well, you have to go to the methadone clinic and see if they'll get her. Long story short, I just keep on hitting all kinds of walls. So some strange person, like just as if you came up to me, some person that knows nothing about what I do, says, why don't you get her a methadone clinic where your place is and have her continue on the methadone while in your place? And I'm like, why didn't I think about this? You know what I mean? We can't detox her. The baby's going to come out any minute. So if we started detoxing her, it's putting stress on the baby. And that's what the doctor told us. So we have to get a methadone clinic by us, right? I'm all over the place looking. All of a sudden, my phone rings. It's the girl from the funeral. So I'm like, oh, I don't know what she wants, but I'm busy with this Zoe thing. But I pick it up and I'm like, hey, what's up? She's like, yeah, I have a client that needs help desperately. She's super addicted and pregnant, and I'm her doctor at the methadone clinic. Right now, my whole body is chills. I'm like, what? And she goes, her name is Zoe. Can you help her? I'm like, are you kidding me? Can I help Zoe? I've been on the phone all week trying to help Zoe. How do you end up being the doctor serving her when your mom left a book? I mean, I can't even trace this back. This miracle started when your mom died years ago. God planted the book so that we could save Zoe now? Like, this doesn't even make sense. But of course, we've got Zoe. Zoe's doing really good. Not a baby anymore, but he came out smiling. If you look at my posts on Facebook, it's the only baby I've ever seen came out smiling. And not only did they hold him, they were going to hold him, we figured, at the unit, right? When he was born. No. 2 days, like everybody else, came out smiling and healthy. We don't know how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's ready.
Yeah. So that's kind of stuff. That's why I'm writing a new book. You can't explain it. Like, how the heck did that happen?
Yeah.
All to get here for Zoe.
So if George or God or whatever that looks like is speaking to any of the listeners and they want to find you, what's the best way to find you and contact you?
Okay, well, you can go to the website. Just so you know, when we named the charity, we didn't know what to name it. So every time we meet up, we go, let's meet about that teen project thing you're working on, because it was about the teenagers. So we're like, okay, we're meeting about the teen project thing again. And then we were at a meeting, like, what should we name it? And there was this guy from NBC that had retired from the news channel. And he's like, you already named it, Lauri. It's called the Teen Project. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, go to theteenproject.com because that is our website. And it's, some people hear it as team, like a team of people. No, it's about teenagers. Yeah, the Teen Project, just simple. And you can go to the contact and you can write an email to contact@theteenproject.com. It comes to me. I still answer the hotline. I mean, I've got staff to answer the hotline, but I answer it.
Anything else on your heart or mind you want to share?
Okay. So this is one thing that I thought I could mention. We save girls that are addicted and pregnant and trafficked. So could you imagine that? You're on the street, you have a baby and you're addicted in your belly. And we bring them into Vera's Sanctuary. We've had so many babies born there that we now started, the Lake Forest house started taking the moms and the babies. We've ran out of room at the Lake Forest house. And we're overflowing at Vera's Sanctuary, and we want to keep it going because we want to put the girls through school. And during that time, much like your kids, we have to support them. But we need another house somewhere in that area. So whatever, I'm just putting that out there. Whether it be a house that's priced well on a big lot that we could expand, or just, I'll put it out there.
Paint the
and leave
perfect
it like that.
picture of what that house looks like. Big lot, how many bedrooms? What does that look
Well,
like?
remember, our first house was 3 bedrooms. It was
three
like a little
bedrooms.
grandma house, and it wasn't pretty. But the lot was big.
Yeah.
So a bunch of construction people came in that were following me and listening to me and said, we're going to knock it down. We're going to leave a couple walls up so we don't hit all these permitting things. And we're going to expand the house. And they built it into a magnificent 6-bedroom house, right? So it really doesn't matter. When you know, you know.
Yeah.
When you see the house, if you're watching this and you already know, then you know. And that's the listening. Oh, I already know. And that would be your first yes, right? Not yes to me, yes to the universe, right?
If somebody wanted to volunteer besides just donate, are there ways that they can volunteer through the Teen Project?
Yes. So there is a group called Teens for the Teen Project. And so crazy, but they contacted me and said they want to help us. Newport Harbor High School. I'm like, that's where I went to high school, right? 100 moms and their kids, mostly daughters, but there are a couple of really cute boys that come do a fashion show for us every year. And The parents pay for the kids to be in the fashion show, and my girls from Vera's Sanctuary join in the fashion show, and we raise money for the team project. You could participate in that by being a sponsor, by putting your kids in it. If you have kids that you think would like to be in a fashion show and learn what it's like to be a little philanthropist, if you want to teach your kid how to be a philanthropist, put them in that. Let them know what they're doing today is saving a life.
Yeah.
We always need donations because we don't have support for the babies. There's nobody providing that, right? That's not an active thing. And for school, we get a lot of it from Steve and Stacy Jones and things like that. If you wanted to volunteer on an event, birthdays, baby showers, we throw big baby showers for the girls. Otherwise, they're not going to have it. And if you have strollers that you've already had your babies, you're not going to have anymore. You got strollers, cribs. I got a mom right now looking for a crib that's leaving our place. So literally, like I said to Paul on the phone when he donated that, over $1 million, you already know what it is. You already know what it is. Sometimes you push the thought away because you don't want to do that, or you're thinking it's your own crazy thoughts and it's not really what, stop doing that and start listening to it. And if you know what it is, you know what it is. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You're like speaking to this guy right here.
Okay. All right.
And
You know what it is?
I think I do. And I love that you're like, I don't want to tell you how to help. You know what it is. You tell me how you want to help, right?
Yeah. How you're supposed to help.
How you're
what
supposed
you've
to help
got.
or
What
assist.
do you got? Yeah.
for sure.
You could be sitting with your toys behind your back. I don't know.
Right.
But
Right.
you know what they are.
Yeah.
You know what you got to get.
But honestly,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time today, because I know you're just always working and telling your story. And I just pray and hope for everybody listening that this is some seeds of change that will inspire people to live in their purpose, to listen to that weird thought, right? To tell their story, to find their God, whether it be George Burns, and to make a difference along the path. And so I really appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship and my organization's relationship with you.
Bring more light together.
Bring
We can
more
do
light
that.
together. Even the light under a thimble in darkness needs to be out, right? So that's what we need.
Every
just a
time we
little
do
more
a
light.
blessing, a mitzvah, which is a word for a blessing, every time we do a blessing, it brings God's light into darkness. It creates more light here. So let's just be light makers and make it happen. Whether you're helping me, whether you're helping someone else outside of your sphere, you're bringing light.
That's a big one, outside of your sphere.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay,
Everyone does their sphere.
there's no ROI for that.
Yeah, no, there's none.
Right? There's not. So
Yeah.
it's just like, that's where you really get out. So that would be that's the challenge. for
And the
me.
big ROI is there. You just don't know what it is.
Right.
Yeah, you don't know what's behind that curtain. But
Right.
when you start giving to the universe, you find out really quickly that you don't have to worry about anything.
And hopefully when your movie's made, we're going to have a premiere party.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. World. Yeah.
World
The
premiere
world
party.
is going to be excited because people on the bottom are going to get back up
Yeah.
and start to live again.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast room. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support us, please share your favorite episodes with others or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from your host, Tim Smith, you can follow me on Instagram at Tim Smith Real Estate. That's all from me. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Room, presented by the Smith Group. This episode was hosted by Tim Smith and produced by Michelle Akers. Chris Stacy is our studio director. Editing by Jake Austin. Special thanks to Pacific Staging and Sandy Newport.